the show The Office, the boss of Dunder Mifflin Paper Company, the great Michael Scott, once said, "The only time I set the bar low is for limbo." This could certainly be said about God and his expectations for the Israelites. Tetzaveh, and you shall command, is a fitting name for this week's Parsha because of the seemingly endless list of specific and seemingly irrelevant commandments about the priestly garb and sacrificial duties. Yes, at first glance, one could skim this Parsha without missing any major plot points of the Torah narrative. However, upon taking a closer look, this week's Parsha has a huge amount to teach us about leadership. It begins with the installation of Aaron and his sons as holy priests, the leaders of the community charged with performing the duties of sacrifice, bringing the people of Israel closer to God. As it turns out, there are many specifications about Aaron's clothing. He must wear a breastplate and a diadem and have richly colored threads in his robe, shoulder pieces and a headdress, a sash, and a tunic. Precious stones and metals are to adorn him, and specific engravings as well. One interpretation is that all of this is for Hidur Mitzvah, the beautification of a mitzvah, that mitzvah being sacrifice. I would suggest that this adornment serves a different purpose. Being appointed by God to be God's servant could be an ego boost of existential proportions, and God definitely didn't want this to happen. Thus, with each specific requirement, God isn't being random. God is planting subtle reminders on all parts of Aaron's body to remind him of the greater purpose of his leadership and to help him be the most effective leader he can be for all the people. One of the first requirements is V'lakachta et shtei avnei shoam uvitachta lehem shmot bnei Israel. And you shall take 2 lazuli stones and engrave upon them the names of the children of Israel. We learn that these stones are to be placed prominently on Aaron's shoulder pieces. Thus, Aaron will never forget that he is acting not on his own behalf, but on behalf of the entire community. He is literally carrying the community on his shoulders. He must practice inclusive leadership, understanding the sacrificial needs of all members of his community. Lest he forget for whom he is working, he is reminded every moment by these shining stones on his shoulders. Other stones serve other purposes. Better known are the Urim and Tumim stones. Perhaps the most mystical objects in Judaism, these 2 stones are to be placed on the Choshen HaMishpat, the breastplate of judgment. Urim and Tumim are often thought of as paired opposites, such as of light and darkness, or good and evil. As these stones were thought to have possessed magical abilities, changing their arrangement to answer tough questions of those who asked, Rashi believes that these stones enabled Aaron to have integrity and discernment in his decision-making. Furthermore, these stones are specifically located al Lev Aharon, on the heart of Aaron. Just as the heart is essential for life, integrity is essential for leadership. Perhaps the most important requirement in the engraving is Kodesh LaHashem, holy to God, on his headdress. Placed upon his forehead is a reminder of his purpose. All of his work is for God. From these requirements, we as Nifty leaders can learn 3 important lessons about effective leadership. 1, we must carry people with us. We cannot lead alone. We need to be inclusive and engaging in everything that we do. 2, integrity is an invaluable aspect of leadership. The ability to make decisions, balancing different options and priorities in the moment, is a skill that all leaders must possess. And 3, there is a greater purpose. Whether we are leading programs or events, everything that we do has a purpose beyond the details. Keeping that purpose in mind clearly in front of us at all times is important because details can change, and knowing our end goal is crucial to making the activity worthwhile and meaningful. As if these important lessons aren't enough, the Parsha goes on to teach us about God's presence. After the specifics of clothing are laid out, the Parsha turns to detailing how animal sacrifice is to be performed. And then, after a seemingly endless list of rules and guidelines comes the verse, Shachanti b'toch b'nei Israel v'hayiti lahem le'elokim. I will dwell with the Israelites and I will be their God. This refreshing break from the gruesome details of sacrifice offers a key insight into the relationship between God and the Israelites. The verse doesn't say, if you wear these clothes and do these sacrifices in these ways, then I will be your God. The verse doesn't say, if you lead in the way that I desire, I will dwell with you. It simply states that God is with the people of Israel. It is an unconditional statement of God's presence. The Torah puts out guidelines for how we as Jews are to live our lives and even puts forth punishment for those who do not follow them. But never does it say that God will desert us. God is always here for us. Whether we are leaders like Aaron or followers, whether we pay attention to the details or choose to ignore them, whether we are in times of joy or in mourning, both of which we have experienced in many ways since Convention 2017, we have God's presence, like the eternal light, dwelling with us. And whether this manifests itself for you in a literal way or through this incredible community here in Dallas, or in some other way, it is here to stay. Shabbat Shalom.